after that great scoring round in round 51, we see 3 teams now have decided to react and patch.
We are employing a variety of static analysis and dynamic analysis techniques that are fast. So if we can identify statically that a flaw exists, we'll immediately release a patch for it. Additionally too, if we can find network traffic that we expose the vulnerability based on the form of attack, we can automatically patch it. So I believe that those two combined factors probably led us to patch quickly.
So now that we see in round 53, the replacements that they just submitted are all up and running.
And we don't yet see any successes, so Galactica looks like they weren't successful against any of those yet. Let's wait to the end of the round. One more from Jima. Okay, so it looks like the same number of vulnerable competitors, just Jima and Mayhem, who we know haven't patched.
So all of those replacements were effective. Now, one thing that wasn't super effective is Crispy's replacement right here. They're suffering unavailability.
Yeah, so they were defended, at least. They prevented the POB from being successful, but at, unfortunately, a greater cost. You never want to impact your availability.
So back to that back and forth story. We talked about how Galactica scored against Rubius, and Rubius submitted a replacement. So this is the replacement from Rubius. What we see Rubius doing in many of their replacement binaries is they have an allocate here with a random size that moves around data on the heap. Then they do this allocate right here that's the same size as the stack, and immediately after that they stack pivot, basically. They reassign the stack to this newly allocated area of memory. And what is really important to understand is that the parameter that they sent into the allocate function makes that new area of memory non-executable.
Excellent. So they've set the page permissions on that memory. I've written stack pivots before, but never in a program, usually for shellcode, right? When you want to kind of pivot your stack and get a clean stack to work with. But that's a cool trick there where they're able to modify the stack. And then, as you said, they set the permissions so that it's non-executable. That's a common technique on most modern operating systems. It wasn't in the base decree, but the API allowed for it. The syscalls would let you make a page non-executable, and that's a very nice, clean technique. So they didn't patch the vulnerability. They didn't fix that pointer overwrite that we saw.
Yeah, and we know that they obviously didn't find it either because they're not throwing a working POV. So, but they were still able to defend using this technique.
They may have been able to detect what it was, or maybe they had some evaluation, or maybe got lucky. But all we know is that we see them submit this the same round that the POV is being thrown, and it precisely targets a feature of the exploit that we were seeing thrown from Galactica.
So next round, 54 here, we see Galactica changing up the POV, just the one that they're throwing against Rubius. And there you have it. They just scored on Rubius with a new POV. This is the same, Rubius is still running that same binary that we saw before that has an NX stack. So obviously this is not the same payload that they were throwing before.
So because of consensus evaluation, when Rubius submits the replacement that had their protection in it, it goes to all the other teams as well. So the other teams have the chance to analyze it and say, I think that this needs to be, I think I can work around this, or I think I find a flaw in this. And so Galactica has submitted a replacement POV that only targets Rubius. It's a replacement for that one team and one team only.
Yeah, and let's take a look at it and see what's different. Again, this is a Wireshark capture, just like before. The traffic from Galactica is shown in red, the traffic going back is shown in blue, and in the same location, we see before we were seeing the function pointer being overwritten with a stack address. Now it's being overwritten with an address within the binary. Yeah. So that's a ROP gadget.
Yep. So they're going to reuse some part of the original binary that was there. So it has to be executable because it's a part of the original code section. You can't make that non-executable.
Yeah. So it's getting around the non-executable stack.
And this is typical, right? Anytime you're writing an exploit against a non-executable stack or any kind of area, you use ROP, right?
Yeah.
You return-oriented programming, you get around it with that.
It's a technique you have to use. So we see up here, after it readjusts the stack, we see a few other ROP gadgets being called. And then really interesting right here is the address of the flag page.
That's the flag page right there. I always look on the right side first and look for that CG. that's your hint, right? So the CG as well as the C0. That's it. That's the flag. So they directly hard-coded the value of the flag page in this time, which they avoided before, right? Their payload
they were obfuscating it, yeah, right, with their shellcode.
But the new payload was able to get around the NX stack at the sort of expense of having to hard-code that flag page in there. But this is successful. We saw it work against the defenses that Rubius fielded.
Yeah, so it's really neat to see the machines going back and forth like that, patching and then reacting to the patch.
And of course, we're speculating a little bit because we don't know exactly what the machines were responding to or how they do it. All we have to measure them on is the actions they took. But certainly the fact that Galactica targeted just Rubius, with the only one with a specific POV that changed how it worked to evade the one protection that Rubius applied, is indicative.
And now in round 55,